Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into our Litera Learning webinar on the Litera desktop from an attorney's perspective. My name is Allison Kim, and I'm the marketing specialist here at Litera. Before we begin, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, so in case you would like to reference back to today's topic or would like to share it with your colleagues, we will send a follow-up email within the next day that will include today's recording. If you have any questions, please submit them into our chat panel and we'll address them at the end during our Q&A. However, if we happen to run out of time, we will send a follow-up with answers to your questions. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to our presenters, Leslie Balser, Lead Customer Adoption Specialist, and Vincent McKetty, Sales Engineer.
Hi, everyone. Like Allison said, just wanted to throw this up here so you know who you're speaking with today. So my name is Leslie Balser, and I'm a customer adoption specialist here at Litera. And I have a background in training, customer service, data analytics, and I use those skills in tangent with everything that we're doing here just to advocate for you all, our customers, and assist with user adoption. Then we have Vincent here who will be going through the workflow a little bit later in this presentation. And he's a sales engineer here at Litera. He works closely with our revenue team to help show clients the value of Litera microsystem solutions. And he's had the opportunity to learn from hundreds of attorneys and legal technologists about workflows that legal professionals use every day. I wanted to quickly show the agenda here just to give you an idea of what we'll be discussing today. So we'd like to touch briefly on the current state of document repurposing and the risks associated with that. We'll go through the avenues to mitigate those risks with automation, and that's when we'll go through our workflow and you'll take a look at the Litera desktop ribbon. And then Vincent will go through the workflow from an attorney's perspective, so to give you a little bit of insight as to how you can work through the ribbon and what features to use within the ribbon. So as I mentioned, there are risks in the current document lifecycle. And although there are more than 3 risks, from creation to first draft, and final delivery, there are 3 areas that we're going to cover as pertinent to an attorney using Litera Desktop. So we know there are more than these risks, but we'd like to touch on these briefly. And then we'll jump into the practical use of our Litera Desktop tools. So the first of the 3 risks is repurposing prior work products. The risk here comes with the inefficiency of finding and sharing your best language from prior work products. Many attorneys we speak to have a variety of ways of saving their language, including saving clauses on their desktop. We've heard about saving favorite language Word documents. Litera Desktop allows you to conveniently find and insert your favorite language right within your document without the risk of formatting issues, as well as share this content quickly with others in your firm. We understand that collaboration is important. The next one we'd like to touch on is formatting and key information inconsistencies. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but as an attorney, your documents are your product. When errors in key information and formatting arise, it's more difficult to focus on the important high-value work. And when you don't have access to a document specialist or it's late in the middle of the night, you have to take care of a lot of these issues yourself. So sometimes it's left to you to fix numbering patterns and validate all of your references, things like that. With Litera, we have a one-click solution that will fix these errors and let you get back to your high-value work that you want to do and need to do. And then there's the risk of reviewing version changes and safely sending out your documents. When you receive a document back from another party or reviewer, you have to know what's changed in the document. Track changes on tools that aren't built for legal documents often just don't cut it when you need to clearly read all of the changes from one version to another. And we want to make the cleanest and clearest redlining tool available for our attorneys to use. And a little later, we'll show you all of this and more. Before jumping into Word to show you the Litera Desktop ribbon, I wanted to highlight some trends that we see in law firms. A report from Wolters Kluwer emphasizes that these 5 trends expected to have an impact on firms within the next 3 years. So you can see some of these trends are coping with increased volume and complexity of information, emphasis on improved efficiency and product, and so on. If any of these risks resonate with you and your firm, we hope that you're using Litera Desktop Toolkit, and so you can help manage these impacts that you're gonna see in the next few years. And we'll show you how to do this again within our workflow example coming up. And just to emphasize the importance of using technology and automation tools within your workflow lifestyle, these top law firm evaluation factors show that clients' expectations are on the rise. If one firm is able to finalize a contract faster, for example, or with less errors than another firm, then the chances are that the client is going to go to that firm before they come to you. So your clients are already utilizing technology in their daily lives to speed up tedious processes and receive faster service. So as a lawyer, we think it's important that you are ready to lean into the speed of these clients' expectations if you want to remain competitive. The nice thing about our Litera Desktop Ribbon, as you can see here, is that you'll have a toolkit at your fingertips to help you automate your document drafting lifecycle. You can create first drafts using our template and document assembly solutions, check your documents for potential issues faster than ever before, and collaborate on your documents while mitigating risk. So with that, I'll turn it over to Vincent so that he can go through a quick workflow example for you on how you would utilize the Litera Desktop Ribbon.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Leslie. It's a wonderful introduction, and I'm excited to walk through the Litera Desktop Ribbon and, what does this look like from our users' perspectives? Especially as they look to really accomplish, I think, what are standard and sometimes challenging tasks. So the first and most important thing is I'm going to ask my co-presenter, Leslie, can you confirm that you can see my screen? You should be able to see an example email that I have pulled up in Outlook.
I can.
Perfect. So the workflow that we're going to walk through today is one that I think is really common. And I don't even say I need to think it. I know that this is really common, right? So oftentimes you'll have lawyers as they're going from, version A to version B, whether it's 6 to 7 or, 42 to 43, where they'll have something like this happen. So someone is going to send them an attachment. In this case, it's a Word document. And they're going to say, hey, please review this document. I've gone through and commented some changes in there. And then we'll go ahead and kick this back out to our clients or to opposing counsel so that we can continue to work through this. So from here, they're typically going to save their document wherever they put it. It's up to them. It's up to some of you as firm administrators, right? Whether this gets saved into a DMS or to just their local file store. But once it's saved, wherever it goes, they're going to get this document open in Word, right? And this is where their editing really starts to happen. Now, the nice thing is, right, I already have a document. So I'm on version 6 right now, maybe, and someone has asked me to go through and make some changes. So the good news is I'm not starting from scratch, but it does look like I have some changes that I need to go through and make. So we can see a couple of comments over on the right-hand side here that my collaborator, myself, has gone through and added. And we'll go ahead and look at this first one. So it looks like he's just requested, we need to add some context outlining the deposit amount. It looks like there's a request for additional language. We currently have a term clause, but he wants us to go through and add some termination clauses. And then it looks like we also want to go through and just add the standard disclaimer that we would add for an MSA, right? So the existing workflow for this would be something along the lines of, I'm going to have to go try to find some document like this that I've worked on before, right? So I'm in an MSA right now. Maybe I'll try to go find an MSA. I'll comb through the DMS and look for one that I might remember working on 3, 6 months ago, maybe 2 years ago. Go through and try to find that. If I don't have that memory, I'm probably going to have to start to ask people for some advice, right? I'll have to ask, hey, have you worked on anything that had these specific types of clauses or content in them? So this process of going through it and getting content can be really challenging. So the first thing that we can do to help with this is to give our users access to what we call a clause library. And this is a central spot where they can go through and see all of their content. So you can see that I have a couple of different categories here. I have my clauses. This is my stuff that I've gone through and saved. I have some firm clauses, so that's firm curated content. If you're, a practice group head, maybe you have a vested interest in making sure that everybody within your group is using the same standard language. That type of stuff can go into that firm clauses heading. And then the last one that I have, the one down at the bottom there, is called practice areas. And really what this is shared folders, right? It's the ability as a user to go in and share content with anyone who has access to that shared folder. So in here, I can really easily save stuff for myself, but I can also share and collaborate with other people. Now, let's actually go through and start to add some content. So I believe our first comment here was under payment terms, and it looks like it's just requesting me to go through and add a deposit amount. And I know that I have a deposit clause saved here. Here it is. So we'll go ahead and say I want this to go after 4.2. I'll just go ahead and put my cursor there. And then I can double click. That inserts it into the document. And I don't have to worry about any of the cut, paste, kind of pray process that a lot of people go through, right? Where you have this document open on one screen, you have that other document that we talked about earlier trying to find in the DMS or something like that, and then you're cutting and pasting from one to the other. And maybe that other document is not in the best health. Maybe it started as a WordPerfect document back in 1997, right? It's a common thing that we have happen. So the fact that I don't have to worry about formatting, I don't have to worry about styling, it just goes into the document is absolutely awesome, right? And we'll continue to go through here and add some content. So it looks like the next one here was that someone wanted me to go through and add some termination clauses. So we can go ahead and say, I've got a couple of termination clauses here. We'll go ahead and do termination for cause and termination without cause. Now we saw earlier that I can throw my cursor at the end of the paragraph if I want to, right? So we'll just double click and that'll bring our termination for cause in, but I can also drag my paragraph in too, right? So it's really up to your user how they want to go through and do this. But again, super easy to get content into their document. Now, this last clause here, it says, can we go through and add a standard disclaimer? And, let's say for the sake of argument, I don't have any disclaimer text saved, right? So there's nothing in my clauses. I'm going to go look for some stuff that someone else may have used at some point. So in this case, I'm going to go look through my practice areas, and I have a hunch on where I think this is. I think it's probably going to be in our communal MSA folder. And here it is, right? So we have a standard disclaimer for a master services agreement. We'll go ahead and double click that, get that inserted in here. If I didn't have an initial hunch on where it was located, I can always go through and search my library, right? So if we wanted to go through and find disclaimer text, we could type in disclaimer and search for that. So it's really easy to use this to go through and potentially locate content that you might not initially know the location of. So we've gone through and we've added a whole bunch of content to this document, which is awesome, right? So we've gone through, we've added these three things. I noticed that there's a request for a table of contents. Those are typically pretty hard to generate in Word. So I'm going to wait to generate that until I'm done editing this. And then typically I would probably do something like, if I don't want to deal with it, maybe I'm going to send it to a legal assistant. Or if I'm at a big enough firm, maybe the firm has a document processing unit or a word processing team, right? I might send it off to the word processing team and have them generate that table of contents for me. If neither of those things are an option, right? We know that most of the drafting of documents happens between 7 o'clock at night and 5 o'clock in the morning, which is crazy, right? But it's also the time that I unfortunately don't have access to my really wonderful drafting resources that the firm may have set up for me. Well, if I can't use either of those, then I'm probably just going to be forced to generate this on my own, right? Generating a table of contents on your own, going through and manually entering things is definitely not something that we want our lawyers to have to do. So in this case, I have a couple of one-click solutions, and Leslie had mentioned these earlier, right? These abilities to go through and quickly fix some common problems. So I'm going to go ahead and click my table of contents button, and this will read through my document and it'll look for anything that we might need to do from a table of contents perspective, right? Do we need to go through and insert something? What are the actions that need to be taken? And then it'll go through and build out that table of contents for me. So really simple, to hit that TOC button and then create our document from there. Now, we'll go through, we'll generate our table, and then typically I'm going to want to go through some sort of review process, right? Even though we've gone through and we've created our document, maybe, now that we've created our document, we need to go through and look at all the content that we've inserted, right? We need to go through and make sure that everything is properly formatted, that there's nothing that has any just issues or errors that have been introduced. Now, the reason that we'll typically want to do this is because as we move from version 1 to version 2 or version 6 to version 7, right, we'll sometimes introduce content from other sources. So even if we're using our clause library, there's a potential that we'll bring in things that have, definitions in them or defined terms in them that haven't been set out in the document. There's a chance that we'll bring in things like section references to sections that might not exist in the document. So this is a really common thing, this is a really common issue that will happen as we're walking through and generating documents. And I'm just now realizing that it looks like my screen may have been frozen. I'm going to pause and unpause. And Leslie, can you confirm that you should be able to see a document just with a TOC generated? Is that accurate?
Yep, thank you.
All right, perfect. So what we can do is quickly analyze the content of the document and determine whether or not there's any issues that we need to review. Right? So we can hit our Analyze button. This brings open this nice, kind of easy to read task pane over on the right-hand side. And I can walk through this and start to identify any potential problems that we might have. So if we want, we can start by looking at our defined term issues. We can see in here that I have a couple of different terms that are maybe used inconsistently. For example, I have the term change order. It looks like it's been defined multiple times, right? So we have it once up in our addition section, and then we have it defined again under change orders, so on and so forth, right? So I can use this to go through and identify these common problems, these issues that we might bring into a document as we're going through our revision process. Another thing that I want to show in here is if we want to do something like validate our internal section references, it's really easy to do in here. Oftentimes, especially if you're maybe a more junior lawyer, someone will hand you a document and just say, read through this and check all your internal section references, make sure that they're accurate. So in this document, I can quickly go through, I can see that I have one internal section reference. I can see that this is pointing to section 10.2, which is our limited warranty section. You can see where that reference is down on the bottom page. So really easy to both see the content that we're referencing, but also see that section reference down on the bottom pane. And then the last thing that I'll mention that we can do in here is we can look for things like names, dates, party names, so on and so forth. Really make sure that, as we move forward with this document, we haven't maybe accidentally kept some prior client information. So we could go in here, look at things like, so we have this individual named Dandy Dispute. That's a name. We may want to go through and change that if it's someone from a prior engagement, so on and so forth, right? So really easy to go through and just review this document, make sure that the content is accurate and that it's ready to be sent out. So now let's say we've gone through, we've done our full review. So we've added some content, we've reviewed some content, and we're ready to get this out the door. But while I was drafting this document, I saw a clause that I actually really liked, right? So maybe I really liked this problem management and escalation subsection here. Maybe it's something that I actually didn't like because someone sent it to me and, they're negotiating against my client, but I want to use this in the future. I want to take this and capture it, use it for my client in the future. It's really easy to capture this content as well, right? So all you have to do is select the content that you want, hit save, and then you're going to be presented with the ability to capture this and get it into your clause library. So again, really easy to go through and add content to our document, really easy to review that document. And then as we're getting ready to send this out the door, if we have anything that we want to capture, we can quickly do that. Now from here, I'm more than likely going to want to generate a comparison of the document so that whoever I send this to is on the same page as me, so they know all the changes that we've made. So in that situation, I can go ahead and hit the compare button, and this will reach out and grab our compare solution. You'll notice that it loads the version of the document that I'm working on into the modified document slot, and then we can go out and grab version 1. So we'll just grab that MSA version 1 here, hit OK, and this is going to quickly run our comparison. So really easy to hand off from, wherever you start from, whether that's Word or Outlook, wherever we're trying to start our comparison from. It's really easy to get into the comparison solution. I can use this to go through and look at my comparison results if I want to. In this scenario, I probably don't need to do that because I'm aware of all the changes that I just made. So I probably just want to bundle this up and get ready to send it outside. In that case, I can go ahead and hit my email button right here. We'll say that we want to include the modified document because I want someone to have a Word document that they can go through and make changes in. But I also want to include a redline PDF because I know that's how my client prefers to review and digest redlines. So we'll go ahead and make both those selections, hit OK. And then this is going to bundle up both of those documents, and we're going to get ready to send this outside the firm. Now let's go ahead and get ready to send it. We're going to send this to vmcketti@gmail.com. This is the client that we've been working with. You can see that we have some default content that's been included in the email. If I want to go through and add any additional context, I can, right? We could say something like, this is the new document, right? So on and so forth. And then we can hit send to send this outside. Now, one other important thing from a lawyer's perspective is that we can also let them know if there's metadata that they might not be aware of in the document. So you'll remember from earlier when we had initially opened this document, all of the edits that I made were dictated by a series of comments that I'd put into the document. Now, if those were comments that were created by my client, that's fine, right? They can have visibility into that. But oftentimes, these are things that are created internally. So in this scenario, let's say maybe I'm a third-year associate. I've gone through, I've made all these edits, but those comments were originally generated by my partner. Well, I'm getting ready to send this out. I don't need the external recipient to see that information. And quite frankly, I don't want the external recipient to see that information, right? Because we don't want there to be any visibility into, maybe some of the thoughts that we were having, some of those internal comments that we made. So we'll go through, let you know, hey, there were some comments in that document. What would you like to do with them? If I wanted to keep them, I could, but in this case, I do want to delete them. We'll hit OK, and then this is sent outside the firm. So that's the workflow that I wanted to show today, right? This process of going through, getting a document, adding content to it, maybe saving some content off of it if there's some language that you want to steal and reuse in the future, going through and quickly solving some of those common problems like generating a table of contents with a single click, reviewing our document, making sure that there's no issues in it, that we're confident in the quality of it, and then ultimately getting that comparison bundled up and getting it sent out the door, all while mitigating the risk that there might be any metadata leakage. One thing that you'll probably notice is this whole workflow was consistent, right? It all existed within Word. I didn't need to go to, I think we used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate, what would traditionally be separate pieces of software. I didn't need to go to 5 separate pieces of software to accomplish this, right? Some of the functionality was in Word, the stuff that I would expect to be in Word. And then some of the things were done in other places, right? Our comparison was done in a comparison application so we can see the comparison result, and our metadata cleaning happened in Outlook. As a user, I don't need to know that these are 5 separate things, right? 5 separate tasks that I would have had to accomplish separately in the past. So this ability to go through and have a unified workflow, one workflow to train to, from a user's perspective, they don't need to know product names, right? From a lawyer's perspective, I don't need to know the product names of each of the things that I just used. I just need it to exist. I need it to work. I need it to be really easy to leverage. So that's all the content that I wanted to cover today. I know that Leslie has some kind of content before we wrap up. We are about 5 minutes until the end of our presentation. So Leslie, I'll go ahead and pass it back to you.
Great, thanks for that. And I did just want to, we'll take some questions here in a minute. But I wanted to show, pardon me, this slide here. So we think it's really important that you start using these tools slow You know, it's going to take a little bit to get used to get comfortable with learning what workflow works best for you. And there's no particular order into which buttons you should press first or anything like that. You can see the way Vincent went through the ribbon, you know, that you can work left to right. There is, you know, when you're starting your document from scratch, there is, you know, certain things that you can utilize in the beginning versus, you know, when you're about to finalize your documents. So we just recommend that you play around with old documents that you're familiar with, start clicking on some of the buttons and seeing what the features look like, what the analog dialog box looks like, the analyze task pane, so you can get familiar with those tiles and things like that. And if you need assistance, our support team is here to help you, and you can always contact your CSM. If you're not familiar with who your CSM is, please reach out to the support team and they'd be happy to get you in touch with all of us. So with that, we're gonna pause for a second here, look for any questions, and then we'll go from there. So hang tight just a sec.
All right, so our first question is, can I change or customize the features on the ribbon?
So I can take that one. And the answer to that is yes. So the goal here for Litera Desktop is to present our users with a consistent workflow that makes sense for them, right? So a workflow that makes sense for a litigation paralegal is not going to be the same workflow that makes sense for a transactional lawyer, right? They're just going to be different things, different tasks that you need to accomplish. So yes, that ribbon is completely customizable, and we would typically encourage some level of configuration to make sure that we're showing workflows that make sense based on the role of the individual, right? So hopefully that gives you some good context there.
Great, thank you. And then we're running out of time, but we have one more question that we want to squeeze in. So you've shown a transactional workflow. Can you make this applicable to litigators?
Yeah, so I can take that one as well. So the easy answer is yes. We went through and showed a transactional workflow today just because I think that's something that's fairly, common. The specific workflow, I think a lot of people are very familiar with, where you're going from version 7 to version 8 or whatever the situation is. We can completely customize this to make sense for a litigator, right? So if you're a litigator, you're going to have some slightly different needs. You're going to be probably generating much more content from templates, from pleading templates and things like that. But we can 100% help this to make sense, no matter whether you're a transactional lawyer or a litigation lawyer. It's just that some of those buttons are going to be different. You're going to have different needs, so we'll customize it to reflect that.
Excellent, thank you. And we are just about out of time. Thank you everyone for joining us. If you're curious about our past collection of webinars or want to see what we have coming up, please check out litera.com/webinars. You will also receive a copy of today's recording and a follow-up email, as well as a link to a survey. So please be on the lookout for that. Thank you, Leslie, and thank you, Vincent, for presenting today's topic, and thank you everyone for joining.